Since I use my cast iron skillet so much around here, I thought I'd do a quick video showing you how I take care of my cast iron skillet. And first, here's an example of a clean, happy cast iron skillet. You can see it's fairly dark. It doesn't have years of seasoning built up like a really, really good cast iron skillet will do, but it's clean, there's no food particles, and it's got that kind of dark sheen from having a nice coat of seasoning, which is basically oil. And now this is a skillet after I've used it. It has food particles. It's not actually rusted. I just used it this morning and haven't washed it yet. So I'm going to show you how I clean it, and then how I dry it, and how I season it. Now first, there's a couple of rules for cast iron. You should never, ever, ever use soap on them. You need to get the food off just by scraping, but the soap will take off the grease, and that will remove all of the seasoning, which will pretty much destroy the use of a cast iron pan. So never soap. Ideally, you want to use something like this. This is a plastic scrubby. I actually made this one out of old onion bags, but you can buy very similar scrubbies. I like to use a nylon scraper like this if I have something that's really stuck on there, or if there's so much food stuck on there that it's just going to clog up my plastic scrubby. Those are my two top choices for cleaning cast iron. You can also use something like this green scrubby. That works just fine. And if it at all possible you want to avoid using a metal scrubby, if you really get something stuck on there, you can use it, but you want to be careful because this will also take off a lot of the seasoning. So stick to plastic as much as you can. So I'm just going to, pretty much like I'd wash any dish, put some warm water in here, without the soap of course, and then scrub it clean with the plastic scrubby. Sometimes it requires a little elbow grease because you're not using a metal scrubby and you're not using soap to help the process along. But if you clean your pans promptly, they'll clean up pretty quickly most of the time. And if you do have something that's really, really stuck on there, you can soak it briefly. You probably don't want to soak it as long as overnight if you can avoid it. But you can soak it for an hour or two if you really have to get something stuck off there. But again, that does kind of attack the seasoning, and so it's not ideal. So now I just rinse all the stray food particles out of that. And then I'm going to dry it on the stove. Some people do this in the oven, but that's always sounded like a more complicated process. So I just wash it out like I would any dish, set it on the stove burner, turn it on medium. You can adjust the temperature according to how your stove works. But what you want is for it to get hot enough to evaporate all the water off and not hot enough to smoke. So you want to kind of keep an eye on it. If you leave the kitchen while it's drying, that's at your own risk. It will probably smoke, and then you'll have to turn off all your smoke detectors and everything. Not that that's ever happened to me frequently. And now that this is all dry, I'm going to turn off the stove. It's been on there a short enough time that this handle is still cool, but be careful because sometimes they will trick you as to how hot they are. You might be able to see there's still a little bit of what looks like moisture on there because of oil from previous seasonings that for some reason is bubbling up, but you can see that all the little puddles of water are gone. So I'm going to go ahead and season this now. You want to be careful because it's still very hot, and if you're particularly accident prone, you may want to wait until it cools off somewhat, but you really want to get the oil on there while it's still warm so that it can soak in and harden properly. And then I just take a paper towel. You can use a rag for this. And you really just need enough oil to coat the pan, however much that is. Probably less than a tablespoon. I got a little more than I needed, but it won't hurt it at all. And just wipe it around till all of the inside is coated. You can also do the outside, but I prefer to keep the outside as little greasy as possible, just for simplicity with getting grease on the burners and things like that. And then, now that it's all very nicely coated with oil, I'll just let it dry and it will be ready to use next time I need it.